Do you know, I found it astonishing to now see that students in one of our top universities now backing terrorists. There is a sickness in our culture. Almost 800 Sydney University students voted yesterday for their student body to back the supposed right of Palestinians to armed resistance, and voted almost unanimously not to condemn Hamas, an Islamist terrorist group that's actually banned here in Australia. And by the way, Hamas is the group that runs Gaza and started this war with Israel by slaughtering 1,200 Israelis, raping women, beheading men, and taking around 250 hostages, including children. But these students didn't just refuse to condemn Hamas, they backed its aim, which is the destruction of Israel. They said Israel should be replaced by just one Palestinian state. What happens then to the more than 7 million Jews there, you can only guess. Now, when one student tried to condemn Hamas, he was actually spat at. Now, when we have hundreds of our university students say, sure, Islamist terrorists have slaughtered all those people and raped and all that, can't condemn them. When we have these hundreds of students saying, sure, such violence is justified, how long before others say, well, yes, that includes violence like that right here? But there's another threat to our unity, and it's one that Sky News will be examining in a special investigation next Tuesday by our investigative reporter Jonathan Lee. It's in a documentary called Clash of Faiths, the fight for Muslim votes. And this is about the rise of a group, a movement, called Muslim Votes Matter, which has accused the federal government of being complicit in a supposed genocide in Gaza and wants to push more pro-Palestine and more pro-Muslim candidates into Parliament. I'm joined by the reporter who's done this investigation, Jonathan Lee. Jonathan, great to see you again. Look, you've got the first on-camera interview with the man behind Muslim Votes Matter, Gaith Krayem. Who is he? What does he want?
Well, good evening to you, Andrew. I should probably start by pointing out where I am. I'm actually beside Bankstown Council Chambers, Paul Keating Park. In fact, you might wonder what the former Prime Minister would say about the fact that swathes of Labor voters are potentially lining up to desert the party at the next election. You're right, we did speak to Gaith Krayem at his home in Melbourne. He's behind the Melbourne Votes Matters movement. He's the official spokesperson. It's one of two bodies now which are rising up, such as their outrage about what has happened in Gaza and the death toll in Gaza, chiefly to Palestinians. They want to, in effect, form a voting body. They don't want to create candidates themselves, at least not yet. And they want to do so in the hope of, I suppose you could say, strong-arming government, making sure that there is policy which favours Muslim voters. They say they're not the only group which does this. There's the Christian lobby, there's also the Jewish lobby, and they believe it's high time that they are also heard. Have a listen to what we had to say, and they're very clear that they believe the government has blood on its hands and it isn't doing enough to stop the war in Gaza.
How do we stand idly by when people in Gaza aren't even getting the bare minimum to survive, not to die of starvation and thirst? And our government has not done everything it possibly can.
You paint a picture there of a government which has got blood on its hands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you have the ability to do something and you fail not to do it, then you're complicit in what goes on.
Well, I don't know how Australia can be complicit in a war we didn't start and we can't stop. But for me, Jonathan, it's scary that the implication here is that if you're Muslim, you must be anti-Israel and blind to Hamas terrorism, or so it seems to me. Is this the one big issue for Muslim Votes Matter? Palestine, Palestine, Palestine?
Look, it's certainly an issue which has galvanised them. We've been told that it's the straw in effect that broke the camel's back, which was what one person told us. We were here at Bankstown Council Chambers the other day when there was a pro-Palestinian group calling for council to look into Israeli contracts with council. They are seeking action. Andrew, it's very, very hard to describe the absolute outrage this community is feeling and experiencing. I've certainly never experienced anything like it in sitting down and trying to understand people's arguments and frustrations here. Tony Burke is also a Labor Party politician, a minister, the Home Affairs Minister now, potentially in the firing line with his seat of Watson. He compares it to what happened with the Teal movement, and he's also explicitly clear that he's not complacent about the threat here to his seat.
I remember, what we refer to as the Teal campaign started, and a whole lot of commentators scoffing and saying, oh, well, you know, they won't get anywhere, politically inexperienced, whatever lines were being used. I'm not going to make that mistake, because the key to what happened in those seats was there is a legitimate grievance in those communities and it was ignored. There's a legitimate grievance in my community and I'm making sure that it's being heard and it's being represented.
I wonder what Tony Burke has in mind when he says they've got legitimate grievances that he won't ignore, given that he's also the Home Affairs Minister in charge of things like immigration, in charge of things like allowing people from Gaza, refugees from Gaza, which is a territory with big support from us, come here permanently. I mean, seriously, this is really, really alarming. Well, great work. That's a very interesting grab you got from Tony Burke. And the full documentary called Clash of Faiths, The Fight for Muslim Votes. Jonathan, you'll be screening it here on Sky News next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Good luck to you with that. Thank you so much for your time.